Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who is breathing in smoke from Canada. And I'm here to talk about Steve Erceg versus David Dvorak. Steve Erceg is 9-1. He's 27 years old, and he's got 4 inches of height on David Dvorak, who is 31 years old and has a record of 20-5. A lot more experience for David Dvorak, and Steve Erceg, even though he's training for an eventual UFC debut, he's taken this fight on short notice, replacing Matt Schnell. Erceg, he is 9-1. I'll start with him. He's got 1 win via knockout, 6 wins via submission, 2 via decision, and his 1 loss is a decision. This guy is a very entertaining fighter. He's a crafty grappler. He's not bad on the feet. It's just that he's not too powerful and not too, athletic, which means agile, really. He did get a knockout, though. Speaking of not having power, I don't know what I'm talking about. He did have a beautiful knockout for his one TKO or knockout victory. It was a legit knockout. He stepped in with a left hook, feinted with a takedown or jab or whatever, dipped his shoulder, and came up with a big left hook and caught him. So, that's not nothing. It was nice, and that was a guy that he'd actually beaten with a guillotine choke, the knockout was first, and then he beat him via guillotine choke sometime later. But that's a thing. Steve Erceg hasn't beaten such great fighters. He's beaten Shannon Ross, who is in the UFC still, I believe, and Sengu Choi, who might come back to the UFC. He came to the UFC for a cup of coffee and then went back to the road to UFC. So I don't know what that means. But either way, he beat both those guys with grappling. Shannon Ross got him out of there with a rear naked choke in round 1, and Sengu Choi, he almost got him out of there with a rear naked choke, probably in round 2 or whatever, in round 3. But he was largely dominant, especially down the stretch with his grappling there. Erceg is not a great athlete, like I said, which is ironic because he reminds me of Jason the Athlete McDonald, a fighter from 15 years ago or whatever. And that's because he's a long, tall guy, Steve Erceg, and he's a good back taker. Really good back taker. I think he's got really good chokes pretty much every which way. He's got a great guillotine. Picked up some nice guillotine victories along the way. And he's got that knack where I think he could submit some really good fighters. He's definitely a talented guy. He's crafty. He had an arm triangle choke over this one guy, and he didn't have the power to flatten him out like some fucking Brock Lesnar. So he kind of cradled the guy, held the arm triangle tight, but like stacked the guy up, whatever. I'm not some jiu-jitsu expert, but it was a very unconventional arm triangle choke. And that was in round 3, too. He was having a little more trouble with this guy. But down the stretch, he was the man, and he got him out of there in round 3. So he's a crafty guy, Steve Erceg. He is a limited athlete. That's why his 1 loss was to this guy he couldn't dominate athletically, Sean Gauchi, although it was still a back-and-forth fight, and he had his moments. He was very much in it till the end, but he lost the positional battle. And I do think, if these guys fight for 15 minutes, I expect Dvorak to get the better of him. And if they don't fight for 15 minutes, if it ends, I still expect Dvorak to get the better of him, frankly. But Steve Erceg, he's a talented guy, never been finished. And I do think he's one of those guys that could submit anybody. So, maybe worth playing him winning round 1. But my pick is David Dvorak. Dvorak, he's got a much more extensive record, 20-5. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. But, that's against Manel Kopp and Mateos Nicolau. I don't know their rankings, but I bet you add the 2 of them up, and they probably don't even add up to 10. So those are really high-level guys. David Dvorak, he's got 20 wins, 8 via TKO or knockout, 8 via submission, 6 of those are rear naked chokes, and 4 via decision. His 5 losses come 1 via TKO, 4 via decision. The TKO was a cut. That was to this guy Filip Maychek, Czech fighter. He also lost that guy by a decision. He lost to another Czech fighter by this decision. And then he lost to Mateos Nicolau and Manel Kopp. And he was in both those fights. I mean, he clearly lost, but he had his moments. He got Manel Kopp down, which proved to be a mistake, because Manel Kopp almost ripped his arm off with a Kimura. But still, he had his moments against both guys, and I just consider him to be a bona fide high-level fighter. That's gonna, he's already done well enough in the UFC, despite losing his last two, where, he's beaten Juan Camilo Ronderos. Not the best victory there, but choked him out with one arm. So, that's still impressive. And then he won decisions against Jordan Espinoza, Bruno Silva, and this guy Arsen before he got to the UFC. Is an impressive victory as well. David Dvorak is a comfortable striker. I think he's much more comfortable than Steve Erceg. Erceg, I guess I shouldn't say he's uncomfortable. It's just that he's always going to be, usually going to be the less powerful guy. He's a guy who definitely has some good straight punches, throws them well in combination. Like I said, he's got a knockout, and he's never been knocked out. He's been chased down and rocked a few times. That guy that he got out of there in round 3, where I mentioned the arm triangle choke, he had some success, marching him down. I don't know if Erceg was ever really hurt, but the commentators thought he was, on 2 occasions at least. I just think David Dvorak, this is his fight to lose on the feet. And overall, MMA-wise, it's his fight to lose, because I don't think he's going to concede position to Steve Erceg. I don't envision him losing the wrestling battle. David Dvorak's very solid every which way, and I think this fight's going to be up to him. I'm picking David Dvorak to win. I would pick a decision with a gun to my head, but with Steve Erceg taking the fight on short notice, and David Dvorak having finished 16 of his 20 wins, 80%, I think finish is absolutely possible. It's just I've never seen it happen with Erceg, and I think I've seen all of his fights, by the way, in the last few days here. So I can't trust anything. I'm just picking David Dvorak. I'm not betting on anything. Staying away from this one until I get drunk about 30 minutes before the fight and decide to bet on round 1 flat, plus 1,000 for Steve Erceg, because I am a degenerate. No, I think it's worth a little sprinkle there, but I don't see really value on anything else. I was thinking about the under plus 140, but again, I can't trust it because, a lot of unknowns. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.